Good morning, everybody. This is Alkin Gorgun. I'm the Chief Security Officer with Managing Information Systems, MIS3. I'm joined here with our panelists to be talking about managing digital risk through threat intelligence. Now, threat intelligence certainly is a very important topic as we continue to transform into the digital age where our information lives in the cloud with our users, specifically through the pandemic, accessing remotely and on BYOD devices. The threat landscape has changed drastically, and the threat actors, their motivations, their behaviors have been shifting. And so today we'll be talking about the ways that we do threat intelligence collection and action and how this has been changing over time. Our panelist, Mohsen Azari from Walmart Canada. Mohsen, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Alkin, and all the panelists for this great session. So I've been with the retail industry for the past 25 years in various different roles. Currently, I lead the cybersecurity practice for Walmart Canada. One of the things that is really near and dear to my heart is the agility of any cybersecurity program. I'm a really advocate of the agile approach and methodology, and we collectively in our areas of the cybersecurity, we have now implemented a lot of that methodology across the organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohsen. And next up is Sunny Jassal from the British Columbia Institute of Technology. Sunny?
Morning. Thank you, Alkin. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sunny Jassel. I am currently the cybersecurity officer with British Columbia Institute of Technology, also known as BCIT, one of the largest polytechnics on the west coast of Canada. More about myself, I've spent the last 20 years in all sorts of roles, starting from supporting, architecting, and leading a variety of technical teams. Very passionate about the subject of cybersecurity, and in general, or more specifically interested in specializing in the field of threat intelligence and threat hunting.
Great, thank you, Sunny. And from the vendor side, we have CrowdStrike, one of the leading endpoint protection solutions today. Serge, please, Serge Bertini.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Serge Proteini. I'm the Vice President and Country Manager for CrowdStrike Canada. I've been in this business for 30 years, so security is in my DNA, and I've done everything from firewall to identity management to GRC to web single sign-on. So I've done it all, and my goal and my purpose in life is truly to educate our customer, our market, and even in the remote places to make sure that they find the best way to protect their environment. So you'll see through our DNA is that protection is at the core, and stopping the breach is what we strive for.
Thank you very much, all of you. Very excited to have you on the panel today. Now, when we start talking about threat intelligence, there's definitely a lot more data. There's a lot more data being generated about these factors. There's a number of feeds that your organizations can be taking off of. And we have the privilege today of acting with a couple of different types of organizations, one in the educational side, on the retail side, as well as from the vendor side. What are some of the key threat feeds that you're subscribing to? What are some of the key characteristics and processes that you're focusing on from your experience? And I'll call on Sunny first.
Thanks, Alkin. You know, you did mention a lot of data. So I'm going to start there and take a step back. And I think at the core of threat intelligence platforms, it's critical for CISOs to understand that we're really dealing with the fundamentals of big data. You know, there's nothing else other than that. So when we peel the onion with the big data problem that we all are dealing with today, I like to refer to the 3 V's of threat, of big data, and align the threat, intelligence platforms with it. And those 3 V's are really about a volume, velocity, and I think it's variety. So, it's important you understand what you're really going to use this intelligence data for. So these are the feeds you're going to bring in, And as a CISO, it's important for you to really think of the strategic, operational, tactical, and technical ways on how you're going to really split this data for the audience within your teams. A certain set of data, you're going to have to take it to your boards. Certain set of data, you need your operation teams to be able to make decisions for defending purposes. Tactical, really for your architects to be able to make decisions and architect your environment. And of course, your technical SOC analyst roles. So what are the various types of feeds? In higher education, one thing that I'm very, grateful to be working in higher education is there's a lot of information sharing that happens within the community. And these are, there's BCNet, there's Orion, there's the Canadian Research. So there's a lot of security-led projects that, we do intel sharing through. And of course, not to mention and not to forget the Canadian Cyber Center. We work very closely with the Canadian Cyber Center for the threat feeds. And of course, just like anyone else, you really want your source of threat intel, be your CrowdStrikes, be your Palo Altos, be your top line vendor feeding you threat intel. I'll pass it over to the panel now.
Thank you, Sunny. Yes, there's certainly a lot of intelligence gathered from industry specific to our organizations. Mohsen, how are your views on this?
Yeah, so following on what Sunny just mentioned about the volume of the data and the way to classify them, I've always been, as I mentioned at the opening, that advocate of the agile and agility within the cybersecurity practice. I think one of the things that really makes any program meaningful is how quickly you actually can respond to this kind of a threat that's facing the corporations. Some of the things that I would like to bring to this forum is there are different kind of threats that are out there and the threat intelligence dealing with them. So one is, I've actually read that there are about 4 types that are out there. One is the tactical one, operational one, strategic, and technical. Each one of these type of threat intelligence basically refer to an area of the threat intelligence that you need to be mindful of. For instance, when we're talking about the tactical one, we're talking about what actually is geared mostly towards the technical audience. When we talk about the operational one, we talk about how that threat intelligence and the feed will come to a security analyst that understands the nature of that cyber attack. So the strategic ones are the ones that are more on a high level and basically trending what's actually happening on the high level. That's really important to the CISOs. And the technical ones are the ones that concentrate on the specific of each one of those threats, being that it's a URL that results in some phishing problems or things like that. So when we have our threat intelligence program, we need to be mindful of all these areas that we need to focus on. As far as the feeds are coming into any kind of a platform, there are definitely a lot of good feeds. Some of the ones that I've been working with and I've been getting the information from are the Internet Storm Center, the Cisco platform, the Cisco Talus it's called, and the ISAC. Those are some of the valuable feeds that I see out there. But at the end of the day, I think any threat intelligence program should be able to bring that sort of comprehensive approach based on those areas that I just mentioned. And once you actually divide it into those categories and you can concentrate on specific areas, you can actually bring the speed right back into your program and pass it to your incident response program.
Thank you, Mohsen. Serge.
Amazing comments. I mean, I'm going to piggyback on your comment about volume and agility. and also the fact that you talk about your responders and trying to make their life easier. So from a perspective of volume, we collect about 4 trillion events per week.
Wow.
I repeat, 4 trillion events per week. Okay, and our team of threat intelligence is continually cataloging known bad application, and that is probably the most critical thing, is the ability to see what is going on. And then also it allows us to identify the application that are unknown to both your environment and across all our customers. So we're looking for the unknown also, but we're looking at something like, why is this looking so different? Why is this coming from this place and that place? Because what we try to also do is that, you know, we spend a lot of time training our people, and we also look people with a long career in threat intelligence. So a lot of them had a background in the military or different places, and they're probably not engineers, but they have a skeptical mind. They had an analytical mind, and they had a mind where this is like, let me track this down. Let me see what it can do. So for us, what is important is how much of this pre-work can we do so we can reduce the amount of false positive and give you the proper information via an incidence of compromise or an incidence of attack. So then you can go back into your network, say like, hey, have I seen this hash? Have I seen this? What can I exclude? What can I include? And it goes back to your level of information that you want to share between your IT, between your executive, and then to the board. So the point is, we want to make sure that we give you an intelligence that it's pretty much distilled and that makes sense to you, and then you can action very fast on it.
Thank you, Serge. And that's a great point. So we talked about big data and all of this information coming through. And I think you made a great point there around how we're starting to look at false positives and correlating all of this information and then making it usable within our own environments. Mosa and Sunny, I'd like to turn it back to you around how you incorporate this correlation and the false positive aspect of all of the intelligence that's coming through. How do you know what's real, what's not, and how do we translate that to the, as Mohsen called out, the different strategic, operational, tactical teams, and how we use that?
I'll take a stab at it, and I think it's important that, you know, your threat intelligence platform is you've really, you know, selected something based on what you should protect, and more important than that is, you know, are you really capable of threat prioritizing? You know, if you cannot prioritize your threats, you know, there's way too much noise, way too much, you know, resources being spent on unnecessary mapping of threats. So trying to follow the fundamentals of, you know, these are really not methodologies or frameworks, but they're really foundational when you're looking at what is it that you're predicting. You know, do you have an intel, but, you know, what are you going to do with that predictive analysis that to dissect your false positives? You know, moving on to the next one will be your preventative stuff. Yes, you know, you have to be detective in, you know, dissecting those alerts, and also being prepared to respond in a fashion where, you know, you have your response plans. You know, there are false positives, yes, but at the same time, being able to correlate, you know, what is in your environment versus, you know, what this attack is really, you know, laterally trying to focus on. So there are a few strategies, but, you know, I think more importantly, it's really taking a step back and looking at your threat prioritizations, and are you capable? And capability is huge when it comes down to diving into a threat intel platform, do you have resources to be able to, determine if this is really a false positive, yes or no? I'll pass it over to Mohsen.
Yeah, exactly. Sunny, along the what you just mentioned about the false positive and making sure that it's actually meaningful, the data that we have. As we all know, there are many tools that, Serge also alluded to that. There are many tools available, and now a lot of them now use the AI and ML, machine learning, to actually parse through that kind of a pattern, that kind of a, type of the threats that we face. So what I would suggest that we would probably need to do is, first of all, we need to baseline and find what is actually the base health of the system, and based on what we actually find from there and what we put together, then we can start finding the patterns and correlate those patterns that come right after the baseline. So once we have a healthy baseline and we start looking at those 4 avenues of the threats that I mentioned earlier, then we can start correlating all these patterns. And there are definitely tools available. Many of the vendors, that they have their own proprietary tools, but there are many tools available on the internet that you can actually parse through those patterns. And whether it's the pattern going through one file or a sequence of file or sequence of data, you can always find those. There are really simple patterns. There are complex patterns that you can find during your search. But the art of actually threat intelligence is to find those patterns. And I think the best approach for that is once you have your healthy baseline and then you get that volume of data coming in, then you can start exploring on those simple to complex patterns.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mohsen. I'm going to add something here before we give it to Serge, because it's going to tie in very well with how CrowdStrike sees these from threat intel. And one thing, it's always important for C-suites to pay attention to, how threats are growing and shrinking over time. This is cyclical. This is interesting that cryptojacking, I'm going to say, is not really behind us, but it's not mainstream conversation anymore. No. You talk about what's happening during, post-COVID or during the COVID period. All we are seeing really is credential stuffing, right? Like, as cybersecurity experts, we kind of see the shift, like it's visible to us. But when we are, reading and when we're really examining these threats, I'm not saying that cryptojacking is completely behind us, but it really is a shift. And it's important, for CISOs to understand and pay close attention to how these threats grow and shrink based on, economic indicators, based on what's happening around us. And I'm sure, Serge, you'll have intel to share with us on this.
Thanks, Sonny. Mohsen, I'm going to take the comment that you made about the art of threat intelligence, because you are absolutely correct. It's about the art. Okay, and Sonny, you're also correct about the fact that what is important to you or what is important to your organization and what does it make sense. So we pride ourselves in translating what we collect into French or English or any language. But the point is, like, we're trying to make sure that if you have somebody new in your organization and read the report, they'll understand it. It's not in techno language. So we want to try to make it simple. The art of threat intelligence is not just about the AI and the ML. I mean, we have a huge AI platform. Like I said, we collect over 4 trillion events per week. The art comes in how you distill that to something that makes sense. And that's where we have our threat hunters and threat intelligence team that are the people that go through all the documentation and look through it. Because our guys and gal not only look at the malware or the ransomware and stuff like that, but they also look at the different nation state and they look at the different things and they look and try to understand the content and the context and the sentiment of the person trying to come after you. Because you got something that they want. What is it and why and how? So that's basically like we look. So for us, most of our indicator, they come from the malware that CrowdStrike brings in and analyze. I mean, we have also huge sandboxes that look at this, and we build those indicator and correspond intelligence from this malware, not only to feed extremely low false positive, but I can offer you very deep context that takes to respond a responder to that incident. So we try to simplify this because time is of the essence. And Alkin, you're going to ask about timing and stuff like that, but time is of the essence. So because we are a global company and we are open 365, 724, if we see something in another part of the world, we know that within the next 12 to 24 hours, it'll come to us. Are we prepared for this? Do we know stuff like that? So for us is the ability to inform you in near real time about something that we're seeing or something that makes no sense, but are you prepared for it? And that's how the symbiosis that we think about all the time, because it's us, you and us against them. And they are very well equipped in attacking us. But some of us, like especially in the educational markets, you don't have the budget that they have. So how can we give you something that will help you be more prepared? And that's what we strive for.
Yeah, I just want to quickly add something that's great point, Serge, and something that Sunny said earlier about be conscious of the time, be conscious of the current situation, like the pandemic that we have, and the way to adjust your threat intelligence response based on that. So a lot of what you see is exactly what Sunny mentioned, that they may not be the sophisticated one as we used to see before, because a lot of people are actually now working from home. And guess what? A lot of home users, they may not have the sophisticated controls as they do have when they're in the corporate setting. So with that, you need to be conscious and mindful of the time and the economy of the situation.
Absolutely. And what we see, because I'll send you some of the report that I'll be able to share. But the people on the other side attacking us, they're running a business. Just like you and I, we go to our office. Actually, we stay at home and do our work. They're doing the exact same thing. They go into the office in the morning, turn the computer, and then they get a list of things that they have to do. And then they'll do that day in, day out. So, and you're right, some of them may not be sophisticated, but it's just the brute force attack, the brute persistency of the attack that, like I remember like 20 years ago, like when people were dialing the phone and trying to find a loophole in a phone to make free long distance. This is the same thing. They're looking for that little window open, that little VPN not configured properly, or the firewall not configured properly to get in and then plan what they want to do.
Thank you, Serge. And just some very good points around there. We talked about speed being key and changing in the pandemic. So next question, just following on this thought, is around speed, right? So how are we? What protocols do you have in place to act on threat intelligence, and how is this changing with what's happening with the pandemic, with remote users, as Mohsen and Sunny pointed out? And furthermore, how do we use automation, AI, and how do we leverage that to respond faster? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, Mohsen, you want to start on that one?
Sure. No, I was going to make a reference to the threat intelligence and also how it ties very closely with the incident response. So any kind of threat intelligence that would have a meaningful impact to make sure that we identify and react fairly quickly with regards to any of the incidents. First, we need to, as we mentioned earlier, we need to have the speed. We need to have the pattern identified. We need to know what we are dealing with. At that point, we need to classify that kind of a threat and see where we go with that now. So that's when a really close relationship with your incident response team comes into play. At that point, you need to write to the magnitude and to the classification of your threat, go to that team and make sure that speed and agility that you have across the entire cybersecurity, whether that's the threat intelligence team, or whether that the incident response team, or the infrastructure team, or app dev team, they all need to come hand in hand and make sure that you got a plan, an agile plan that can take you right through the response as well.
So if I may add to this, speed is critical. And you guys have seen the Ponemon reports, or the Verizon threat report, or our threat report, or any report for that matter, that says that the attackers can get into, some of them are faster than others, but the fastest one that we've seen can get in less than an hour. And then, but traditionally, if they attack you, it'll take them 5 or 6 hours. Okay. We've introduced a couple of years back the concept of the 1-10-60. Okay? And the 1-10-60, it's a notion, it's an ideal, but that we believe in. And what it means is the ability to detect something different within 1 minute, the ability to classify it, to understand what it is within 10, and the ability to remediate it within 60 minutes. So 1-10-60. 1 minute to detect, under 10 to classify it, and then on the 60 to remediate it, okay? And what we've done here in order to do that, we have integrated our intelligence into the malware analysis that we've done via Sandbox, and also all the endpoints. Remember, I have millions of endpoints across the world, 4 trillion of them we collect. So this intelligence allows you to focus not only on the indicator, but even more so on the behavior of the actors and the malware that they use for the malicious campaign. So this is what to us, like, and then we sort of reconstruct this following the MITRE framework, because we want to make sure that the detection is mapped to that framework, that the behavior is mapped to that framework. So we know that if somebody is going to launch a ransomware, it's going to start with a phishing attack somewhere here or something else. But then when you have that ransomware, the ransomware by itself is a step of behavior on your system that then encrypt your machine. So somebody would have to look at the reconnaissance or something like this. So we look at the user behavior at the center, because we say, you know what, somebody may have stolen Mohsen information and then go after him. Okay, and then it's acting. But we know that Mohsen, when he comes into the office, he does the following 10 steps. Why is suddenly Mohsen launching a PowerShell? Now, in itself, a PowerShell is benign. I mean, everybody in IT uses it. But Mohsen is not an IT user. He's just on the business side. So we said, you know what? Let's monitor. You need to tag every action that is happening, because you also, the other thing that you want to do is do not disrupt your business. You don't want to say like, oh, this is a PowerShell you should not be using, let me block it. Well, not really. So you need to have the ability to scale your protection by deciding, you know what, it's Mohsen, it's fine, it's green. Mohsen is using, is launching a browser that's still green, but suddenly Mohsen is doing a PowerShell. He's never done that. Let's turn to this yellow or orange, and then suddenly I see Mohsen downloading or trying to push a Mimikat, or even downloading an LSAS, which is all the password. At that point, when you try to do that, that's when you have to block it.
Well, Serge, I promise I don't do all that bad stuff anymore.
I'm just speaking example. But
no, I understand.
For us, it's really the fine balance between protection, prevention, and not blocking the day-to-day business. Because like with security, you could be the biggest denial of attack by saying like block.
Yeah. What you just mentioned, Serge, I think makes perfect sense with what we talked about earlier. One is you find the baseline, you know where I come from. You
Yes.
know what is my business, day-to-day activities. Then you come and see, okay, let me see what kind of pattern this person has on a daily basis. Then you basically know me based on the average day-to-day activities that I do. And exactly like that, a threat intelligence can be very productive when you know your users and your entire baseline. As soon as there is deviation from that, then goes those amber and red alert that you mentioned.
You are absolutely correct. I mean, traditionally, we were worried before about malware and TTPs, but the world has changed. 60% of the attack are non-malware based. And the traditional vendors would have in the past, or even some of them still do, basically create a signature to protect themselves from an attack. But that's still 24 hours or 48 hours later. That notion has to go away. We need to be able to be protected for day zeros. We need to be able to do like in real time, not based on something like that, based on the behavior, based on the pattern, based on the threat intelligence, to be able to block that information. That's the essence.
Yeah, good point, Serge. I wanted to add on to, I'm glad we talked and touched on the business and the traditional way of threat intel moving. And, in my, not direct experience, but it's already coming. It's, when we're talking to the C-suites, you're really looking at this traditional security operations moving to leveraging and allowing other functions within your organization to leverage your threat intel. And,
Absolutely.
this is, be your fraud, be your risk management teams. Like it's, this is, if not already there, this is actually going to be something the C-suites, the CISOs need to start integrating within their internal threat sharing. It's critical.
It's really, the ability to work hand in hand. It's not something that I will do for you or something that, you need. It's something that we do together, because together we get more powerful.
So let me ask a question. This is a great talking point. So how has, we look at the traditional way that we did incident management, threat hunting, and how has this shifted now with, on the one aspect, there's digital, everything's moving into cloud. On the second, we've been hit with this pandemic, everyone's working remote. So how has the threat intel incident response plan had to shift? Mohsen, you talked about baselining and agile. How do you now the challenge of understanding the changes there around what's normal, what's not? How have you adjusted to that?
Well, nowadays the threat intelligence program is not a single inside the house program anymore. You need to basically get a lot of feed, a lot of interaction with many other organizations, with many other tools and resources that you have. Some of those resources are your partners. Your partners go through problems, go through their own incidents, and then you can actually learn from them. If you establish a relationship with your vendors, your partners, with anybody that you have a relationship with, and if once they have their problems, they can correlate that with you. You add 2 more patterns into your threat intelligence program. You add a couple of more findings into your program. So then you actually become more robust dealing with the situation. When you use dark web, for instance, as a source of one of your feeds, so a lot of bad stuff that happens are actually being posted on the dark web. So if you got a really close eye on the dark web with all the bad activities that could potentially, implicate you or potentially have your name or organization on it, that's again another approach that you can act quickly. Oh, that IP address, that name that has come up in the bad actors kind of a forum. So I need to be very agile and quick into addressing those issues, because looks like there might be a problem that I didn't even know. So there's a few things that are changing with the time. One is the coordination and correlation with our partners and people that we do business with, because that's a huge source of information for any organization. If you can establish that relationship with your partners and learn from each other, that's one aspect that will help your program. The other one, as I mentioned, is the dark web. If you have good intel and good forums and good areas that you can tap into and get the intel from that, that's another way that you can actually enhance your program.
Yeah, just to add on to that, Mohsen, I think you kind of went through the items, and the one thing that we in higher education are very pay close attention to is the intel sharing that comes from higher education specifically.
Yeah.
So there are programs that are led by the province or the federal, be the Canadian research, and there is this intel sharing that happens very specifically around the educational sector. The same would apply, if you were in utilities, or the same would apply if you were in retail. So, going back to paying attention to, what's growing and what's shrinking is also sector specific at times. And I'm going to pass it over to Serge because, from an intel gathering perspective, there's a lot that we as CISOs don't see necessarily because, it's shift. It's happening. What happened yesterday might not happen today.
Yeah, I mean, Sonny, great point. I mean, we work with different ISACA, the different sectors, and that's critical because this is the time where in closed door you can talk about the different things and you can talk openly and you can look at what is going on. We do work with a lot of different agencies, and it's this hand to hand. This is the partnership that we strive for, that help us getting to help you at the same time. But I'm going to take you in a slightly different way because the work from home is also important. I mean, I've been working from home for the last 15 years. Okay? It's an adjustment, and it's a big adjustment. Now, because of my job, I've been traveling for the last 30 years, at least once a week. Okay, and now since March 3rd, I've been stuck in an 8x12 cell. Okay, so think about this for a second. A guy that travel all the time, go to the best restaurant, the hotel, the this and that, meet people all around the country. Now I am sitting at my desk from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Zoom call after Zoom call, just because the sheer volume of question of people say like, what do I do? Help me. It's increasing tremendously. Now, from a personal side also, we spend a lot of time with our team because it's not a natural thing to be staying at home alone. Like some of the people are complaining that they're living in the office, they're sleeping in the office, and we try to put system in place to help them find that breathing room, find that separation, so they can go for a walk, go work out, do something different. Same thing in the business. I mean, people will pry on your people because they know that they're longing for that human contact, the human touch, and they would abuse that bond to get information out of them. So that collection of information to go after you. We haven't missed a beat in the way we do our threat detection, because we do, and we don't, because we are cloud-based, we don't really care if your machine is in the office, if it's at a cafe, or if it's at home. It's the same thing. The network, the only thing that has changed is that the network has changed. The network has expanded, and now the network is not just the confine of your office, but it has extended beyond your office into your home. And then we have to make sure that, by the way, is this machine has the latest patches? This machine has the latest protection? Is your kid using the machine to play games, or what is going on? So it makes the it makes this even more complex and daunting. So to us, like, you know, having the ability to ingest threat intelligence and taking it back to your SOC team in plain English or French, it make the job much easier. So instead of on a daily basis, they would have 200 incidents that they have to follow, which is impossible to follow. Now they're coming down to maybe like 5 or 10 that they can do. That's what we're trying to push and try to help.
I will add to Sunny's and Serge's point about this collaboration and having, you know, other fees at your disposal. I think, and I'll give you some examples, you know, with the recent increase in ransomware attacks on many organizations, there are different type of ransomware attacks that is happening now. There are types that they call them, you know, ethical hackers, that they actually ask for ransom, and they promise you that if you give them the money, they will not actually, you know, expose the data. So, yeah. and some of them, they're on their words, and some of them, they're not. So if you actually learn from that actor that has challenged or has attacked other organization, and what was the behavior, because it's not a done deal. Some organizations choose to actually pay the ransom, and some, they have this code they absolutely don't pay because they have proper backup, because their infrastructure is up to date, and they have the data stored somewhere else. So then you will take that name of the actor, you will take that behavior of the actor, and you actually bring it to your program. And then you know how that will add extra intel to you and your organization, how to deal potentially with that kind of an actor in the future.
So this is a great way of how we're integrating all of the information that's coming from the various sources, whether it's be across industry. I'm sure law enforcement and collaboration there is increasing as well, right? What about the threats that we don't know about, right? The unknown unknowns, and we can't certainly subscribe to every threat intelligence feed, or there's certainly threats that we're not getting in our program. How do you manage and get ahead of those with perhaps a proactive threat hunting approach?
I'll be really brief on this one. You know, it might sound funny, but this is what keeps us employed. You know, what is happening tomorrow is really my title. Yeah. You know, like, what is going to happen tomorrow? You know, that's the $1 million question. And what I, as an advisor to this, the executives and the boards, my thing really is, let's focus on what's ahead, right in front, rather than going way ahead of, yourself. Manage what you have. And there's always room for improvement. That's the element of running a business. The risk is always going to be there, but to what degree you're going to, accept that risk is the answer that the business decision makers need to make. But it's your responsibility as a CISO, coming back to, moving away from the traditional security operations and reporting, the sharing of this intel on a quarterly basis, or maybe even more often, with your C-suite. This is the shrinking, this is growing, this is what's happening out there. Not to create the fear, but more importantly, to be, as an advisor, to inform, like you have to build that culture. It's almost like a rehearsal every time you go in front of the board or, your executive. You really have to be able to give a pulse check. This is the pulse check for now, right? What is happening tomorrow? It's just like,
tomorrow is another day.
Tomorrow is another day. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, Sonny is great. I mean, like well, when I was traveling, even now, but I used to spend at least 50% of my time educating boards and educating business executive, because they have no idea what it means. And you're absolutely correct. So, like, what is the risk? What is the impact? And let's waive it. Like, your job is probably the most difficult, because you need to not only protect the environment, but also educate them and explaining what is the risk so they can understand. It's actually not an IT risk. It's a business risk. And they're the one that needs to be able to translate that. So like, okay, I understand, what do you need? We had to, so that's to us, it's fundamental to be able to train the people, that so they understand what exactly they're looking in front of them. The attack is not going to stop. They're going to evolve. They're going to be different. It's going to be ever changing. But one of the things that we do and we do quite well is not just the threat intelligence, because we have a team that looking at that, but we also have a team of threat hunters. And those are the guys that are looking for the unknown. And like you said, Sonny, their job is guaranteed for life because no one is going to take them. But those are the guys that are looking at the very small to the very big. But it's like the patterns. So like, have you seen this anywhere? Does this make any sense? Is this a variant of this or Raikou or something like that? Or is this something completely brand new that we've never seen? Or is this a combination of this attack plus this plus this plus that? That's the that's where for us is, we don't profess to have all the answers, but we look at everything. We look at the very small to the very big. We look at the unknown, and then we analyze and super analyze and go back at you and say like, hey, is that sound familiar to you? Is this something within your organization that somebody would do? That's the correlation.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what the topic of this discussion, which is managing your digital risk and dealing with the unknown. Basically, you need to make sure that your fundamentals are sound. You need to make sure that your digital management, risk management is a comprehensive and solid program. Without going through a lot of details, when people, they ask me this question over and over again, I give them a few areas that they can actually make better and make sure that they do understand and solidify and make those areas much more robust. Are those to manage their digital risk? One of them is there are 8 areas that I took a note of. One is your cyber attack risk. This is what we're talking about, the intelligent and the TIP. Then you have to mitigate your third-party risk. You need to manage your workforce risk, these dynamism that going from a corporate to work from home. The fourth one is make sure that you secure your cloud transformation. Make sure that you modernize your compliance program. This is very important because a lot of time the compliance going today will fall out of the compliance in 2 years' time. So you have to make sure that you constantly update that program. You need to manage your process automation and make sure that you have a good AI and ML program built into your process. The last two are your business resilience. You need to make sure that your business resilience is all sound. And the last one is your data governance and privacy. So if we have these fundamentals within our digital risk management, all these 8 areas all properly managed and properly addressed, then we can sort of sleep sound at night, thinking that yes, we can deal with hopefully with the unknown that's coming tomorrow.
Yeah, really good point, Mohsen. Just in closing, I know it might sound like an impossible thing to do, but as leaders, managing those irrational approaches that are quite common today. There was an attack. Maybe it was on a nuclear plant. Okay, well, yes, that's the pulse check, but for someone in an SMB running a business, that's a bit irrational approach and overreaction in what you're going to do. So, having an understanding of what you are up against in your digital, risks management of those digital risks, I think it's important. What do you have that you need to protect? What's your crown jewels? are they classified? Do you have a program in place that, is being there's oversight on that program? Are there, metrics and outcomes from that program? And trying to keep a balanced approach on not overreacting to, some of the irrational experiences that we're all, we're fed this. It's the part of what we, have to adopt to, right? So thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts. That's great points around aligning the intelligence, the threats out there to our business and context with focus. There's a couple of questions coming in from our audience, and one of them is very on point here around dissemination. So what are your perspectives around sharing of information, threat intelligence internally within our organization? Should we share everything with everyone in the C-suite, or how do you prioritize what to share and when?
I'll take that one
ahead.
quickly, because I think it's critical that you share the information with the C-suite. They need to be informed. Like I said, they can be playing games also, because they're going to say, oh, I'm going to dump this on the IT. IT is going to take care of it. Well, no, sorry. Let's make sure that you bring this back to where it began. It's a business risk. They need to understand the business impact of the situation. They need to be able to empower you to make the right decision. And like Mosa Nazari said, you know what? Give me it's not just about the tool; it's the people and the processes. But it's like keeping things current, not obsolete. And it doesn't have to be by changing technology. It just has to be changing the policy, changing the way you approach things, changing the way you look at certain things. Now, if your technology is 10 years old, maybe you need to change that. But it's like, what's the behavior? Our behavior because you can never go like, every year go up and up. It's like, how do I adapt what I have to make sure that I can address the business risk? So the moment you have the C-suite behind you, your job is much easier, because you only have to fight one thing, which is the attacker, not defending yourself to the C-suite. That's critical.
Yeah. And add to that, we all need to be the security champion. We all, as much as we care about the bottom line, as much as we care about the financial of the organization, if they go hand in hand with how you want to thrive and how you're going to survive and how you're going to limit the financial impacts that some of these potential problem will come and face you. So yes, it needs to be right at the level of the CISO and the level of the C-suite, that all of them, as a matter of transparency, as a matter of keeping the corporation goals in perspective, they all need to be on the same page.
Yeah, well said, both of you gentlemen. I'm just going to add something in closing to that and put a bow on this. Really, at the same time, we leaders as CISOs need to also bring forward the positive behavior element to it. How did we respond? Yes, it's great to see the threat intel, also trying to shift that psychological adaptability of, this is what we were up against, and these are the type of attacks we were able to block. Adding the effectiveness element in your response reporting is also important, as you raise awareness with the C-suite by intel sharing and intel gathering from other sources. So I think it's equally important, if you're in an environment where you have an exposure to, maybe, Mohsen, you can add more to the supply chain, like supply chain, a bit limited for higher education, but I think it's important for, businesses that are running supply chain, and other,
any businesses.
Those are target vectors as well. So
I do have one last question for both of you. Do you have the ability, and what you said, Sonny, it's perfect, because we always go, oh my God, there's an attack and this is what happened, but we're not good enough about saying, here's everything that we blocked this week, here's everything that we blocked this year. So my question to you guys, do you have the ability to share via a portal or something like this to the executive, so they can see a dashboard of like yellow, green, yellow, red, green, yellow, red, whatever, of the situation and wellness of the week, what's going on, and this is what we stop. Is that
yeah, we actually do. We actually have exactly that kind of a dashboard that, you know, color coded and goes right up to the executive summaries that provided. Yes, it can be trickled down to on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly status. So definitely that's something that we have incorporated into our environment to bring visibility right to the top.
That's important.
Yeah, and then, you know, I think it also, just to add to that, I think every organization is going to be different in their maturity of adopting to the tool sets that are out there, you know, be it through the cloud journey or through your digital transformation. And, you know, it's important, you know, to also look at, you know, organizations that, you know, just a good example would be anyone leveraging Microsoft's Azure Active Directory environment. You know, there's built-in identity specific credential stuffing type of AI-led analytics that are visible, that are readily available, you know. So trying to incorporate that into your threat intel feeds, trying to, you know, find sources of how do you, you know, inform your C-suite. Well, what are the various sources available to you that might not necessarily be through you know, a threat intel platform, but I think it's important that if you don't have it, don't just lose sight of, oh my God, we don't have a threat intel platform.
But
I think go out, look at your endpoint protection, you know, statistics, look at your identity provider for leads, and then start with something. Not starting with anything is most probably, you know, not the right approach, but starting with something.
Thank you.
Keep it simple. I like keep it simple.
Thank you for sharing your views. So yeah, we're going from just threat intelligence to business alignment and ultimately managing business risk, which is the ultimate goal. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for sharing your views. With that said, we only have a couple of minutes left. I'd like to just kind of throw out what are some of the new digital risks you're seeing that are emerging, and maybe some closing remarks for the group today.
You know, to me, what's there right now is, again, what's immediate right now, right in front of us today, is all credential stuffing stuff happening. It's important that you know, you do a pulse check on this. We're still in COVID. We're here. This is the new normal. So adjust accordingly.
Yep. I would say the same, that with all the workforce now working remotely, you need to pay very close attention to your perimeter and where your perimeter is. Perimeter is not the old traditional one anymore. So you need to ensure that whatever standard that you have for your corporation, you now can extend that into a kind of a offline remote kind of capacity. So that is going to be really important. And going forward, even if we're coming out of this pandemic, with the way that we see the future and the way that people are going to be working from home, like Serge has been doing for the past 30 years, that is going to be quite important to actually pay attention to that.
I think ultimately the notion of zero trust become critical. The notion of identity become critical. And Sonny, I agree with you 100%. The credential stuffing is become the more dangerous. Using wrong certificate, it become really, really dangerous and stuff like that. So and you, Mohsen, with the perimeter, there's no more perimeter. Okay, so to us now is, I have to worry about the user, I have to worry about the machine, and the machine could be a phone, a laptop, a desktop, a container, a virtual machine. It could be anything. So this is where the proliferation of that information is there. Now, in terms of what we're going to see, you're going to see more of everything. You're going to see a lot more ransomware because it's become easy. It's a business. It's you know, like this, people, you can buy a ransomware tool on the internet and go after somebody. So we need to do more education with our users in terms of phishing. We need to do more education with them on not storing their information or office information in a box or in a Google Doc that is not part of the business. You know, some people look at the simplicity, and even on the university, the professors like, I'm doing my research, leave me alone. We need to be able to explain to them some of the danger of what we're seeing, so they can make the proper decision. Empower the people to make decisions.
Serge, thank you. Sunny, Mohsen, thank you very much for your time today. And
Alkin, thank you.
Thank you, Alkin.
Thank you so
very
much,
much.
Alkin.
Good conversations, Mohsen.
Really
Serge,
good
thank you, Alkin.
conversation.
Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
all.